Well, there has been no response yet from the weather balloons with uh, vacuum sealed capons and uh, duck and brisket and a few other items. Pork roll, I think they had. Um, so they're waiting for letters, emails, or phone calls, or anything. Find out where the weather balloons. They had about a dozen food items on each weather balloon and set them off. There was no big wind, though, that previously, years before, sent them off across the Atlantic and down to the Caribbean. So we don't know yet. Anyway, the night of or the day of 1,000 pies at St. Ignat's last Saturday went off without a hitch, and it was very successful. They sold, I think, not 1,000 pies, but I think they sold like close to 300. And well, uh, way back, they used to set up this tree, and they still do. It's kind of like the signal of the holiday wacko do season starting. M&M Precast Concrete Drainage and Septic Tank Company. They have this tower along the street and across from a mobile station, and they hoist this huge Christmas tree up every year about Thanksgiving and light it up. It's pretty large, and that usually signals the start of it. Anyway, uh, long ago in Still River, Thanksgiving, uh, in the long ago in the late early 60s or late 50s, we had this big old cast iron stove that it ran on. It didn't run on gas or electricity. It ran on oil. This kind of, I don't know if it was a kerosene stove. Anyway, periodically, maybe once every couple months or a month in the winter, uh, you go down into the basement cellar. They had these cellar doors that opened up. They call Belkin doors. And you went down, there was big 50-gallon drums down there on their side in these cradles with a spigot. And you filled up this, it looked like maybe a 3 or 4 gallon tank that you brought up and attached to the stove. And you lit the stove by these big matches. And this stove was a monster. It did not cook even unless you heated it up for a day or two. And this thing would heat up the whole. We had a huge kitchen. Formerly, it wasn't a kitchen, it was something else. So it was converted, but it was huge. We had a huge living room on the second floor on Main Street in Still River. The house is huge in itself. I guess one time the downstairs was a livery stable in the late 1800s, and when we lived there, it was an awning company, a tent and awning company, and floor covering, linoleum, and that's what they used back then. And this thing would not cook even at all. So the turkey came out like half burnt and half raw. And my mother threw it out the back of the kitchen window into the backyard. The neighbor had like 4 hound dogs out in the backyard and 4 dog houses. And, so the dogs had Thanksgiving dinner. And we went down across the street. There was this convenience store across the street. And it had a driveway on the right that went down, sloped down steeply, and down in back, in the basement in the back, was a bakery. And I don't even think it had a name. and it had like actual bakers in there in white with the hats and everything, big ovens. Didn't even have a sign. You went in the side door, there was one counter, and they baked the most fabulous Italian bread and rolls and pizza. But they only made plain cheese pizza, what they would call margarita. Now, it didn't even have the sliced tomatoes on it, but it was the most fabulous pizza. And so we had three large ones for Thanksgiving dinner, and like 3 quarts of orange soda, which was fabulous. And well, then there was the Christmas tree fire. If anybody remembers, he had these Christmas lights. They were shaped like a glass candle in a candle holder that screwed into the light string, and they had like liquid in them of different colors, and they would heat up, and different color water would light up and bubble up the candle, glass candle. And these things were extremely dangerous. I think they outlawed them like a year after. And so he had the Christmas tree, and in the living room we actually had an actual mantelpiece that, if it was opened, there was a chimney which Santa Claus couldn't slide down because it was a very small chimney, but it was a big mantelpiece from like the 1800s in the living room. And the views out our living room window were great. You could see all the way down each end of Main Street almost. And at Christmas time, you could see the lights in the downtown section of Main Street from our window. And well, one of these lights, they didn't light. You kind of hit it, dink dink, with your finger until it did. Well, if you did it hard enough, this glass would break. And it happened, and the tree caught fire, and we were all screaming. And the thing burns very fast. The mother came running out with a big bucket of water from this kitchen sink, which was huge, and threw it on it, and we unplugged it. So we had half a burnt tree. And so we just turned the burnt half around against the wall in the corner, and we had a half a tree for Christmas. So that was Christmas in Still River. So the festivities will be starting soon. Santa is at the mall already. He has been for like a week and a half. And the tree lighting ceremonies will probably be beginning next week in Still River.